In this ongoing journey, David had found not just purpose, but the very essence of what it means to be fully, vibrantly alive. For he had discovered that in this vast, complex world, it was the simplest truths that held the most power: love, compassion, and the courage to live authentically. And so, David's journey continued, not toward some final destination, but in an ever-expanding spiral of growth, service, and awakening. Each day was a new beginning, a fresh opportunity to embody the change he wished to see in the world. He had learned that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or professional accolades, but in the lives touched, the love shared, and the positive change created in the world. In the quiet of the night, David made a silent promise to himself and to the universe to continue living each day with purpose, to remain open to life's lessons, and to never forget the interconnectedness of all beings. He thought back to that moment in the void when a gentle voice had reminded him of life's fundamental truths. David realized that his journey of awakening wasn't a destination he had reached, but an ongoing process. Every day presented new opportunities to deepen his understanding, to serve others, and to grow in love and wisdom. As he drifted off to sleep, David felt profoundly grateful for his second chance at life. Instead, he welcomed it, understanding that each moment was an opportunity to choose love over fear, connection over isolation, and purpose over mere existence. Later that evening, as David prepared for bed, he caught his reflection in the mirror. The face looking back at him was older, lined with the experiences of the past years, but the eyes were bright, filled with a vitality that no designer suit or corner office could ever provide. "I used to think that the meaning of life was something you figured out once and then you were set. Now I understand it's an ongoing journey, a daily choice to live with intention and compassion." As they finished their meal and cleaned up together, David felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to learn and grow. But he was no longer afraid of the unknown. "It's not always easy, but I've never felt more alive, more connected to what really matters." Elena reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "That's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's not about finding some perfect, trouble-free existence. It's about living authentically, embracing both the joys and challenges with an open heart." David nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. Together, they had created a home that was not just a place of personal refuge, but a hub for community gatherings and planning sessions for various charitable initiatives. As they sat down to a simple dinner, David shared his experience at the hospital. Elena listened attentively, her eyes shining with understanding and shared purpose. "You know," David said, "there are days when I still can't believe how much my life has changed. From Robert's shift in the law firm's culture to the young law student emboldened to pursue a career in public interest law, David saw how personal transformation could spark wider change. Arriving home, David was greeted by the sight of Elena, now his partner in both life and community work, tending to their small garden. Their relationship had blossomed naturally, built on a foundation of shared values and a commitment to serving others. There was the youth mentorship program he had helped establish, the environmental law clinic he advised, and the mindfulness workshops he led for burned-out professionals. Each endeavor was a thread in the rich tapestry of his new life. He thought about the ripple effects of his actions, how his story had inspired others to reevaluate their own lives and priorities. He still faced difficulties, moments of doubt, and personal struggles. But he now approached these obstacles with a newfound resilience and perspective. His understanding of success had fundamentally shifted from personal gain to collective well-being. As he drove home, David's mind wandered to the various projects and people that now filled his life with meaning. Leaving the hospital, David paused in the parking lot, taking in the vibrant colors of the autumn leaves. He reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The ambitious lawyer he once was seemed like a character from another life. Yet he recognized that every experience, every choice, had led him here. David's transformation hadn't erased his past or magically solved all of life's challenges. Fear is natural, but it doesn't have to define us. Each day is a gift, a chance to live with purpose and make a positive impact, no matter how small it might seem. As the session ended, people lingered, exchanging contact information and words of support. David felt that familiar warmth in his chest. Not the pain of a heart attack, but the profound joy of connection and shared humanity. The participants, initially hesitant, now eagerly shared their own stories and aspirations. David listened intently, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. One man, his voice trembling with emotion, spoke up. "I've been so afraid since my heart attack. Afraid to live, afraid to die. But listening to you, I'm starting to see that maybe this is an opportunity rather than an ending." David nodded, a compassionate smile on his face. "I'm here to share my story with you, but more importantly, I'm here to listen to yours, because each of us has a unique journey, and there's wisdom in every experience." As David spoke about his heart attack and the profound shift it had sparked in his life, he saw recognition dawn in the eyes of his listeners. Some nodded in understanding, others wiped away tears. As David concluded his talk to the heart attack survivors group, a palpable energy filled the room. David closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to center himself. "Mr. Thompson," a gentle voice interrupted his reverie. He opened his eyes to see a nurse smiling at him. "The group is ready for you." David followed her to a small conference room, where about a dozen people sat in a circle. Their faces showed a mix of emotions: fear, hope, determination. He recognized those feelings intimately. "Good morning, everyone," David began, his voice warm and steady. One crisp autumn morning, David found himself back at the hospital where he had his heart attack. This time, he wasn't a patient, but a visitor. He had been invited to speak to a support group for heart attack survivors, to share his story of recovery and transformation. As he waited in the lobby, memories of that life-changing day flooded back. The pain, the fear, the journey into the void. It all felt both distant and immediate. As months turned into years, David's life took on a rhythm very different from his former existence, yet infinitely more satisfying. His days were filled with a mix of volunteer work, mentoring, public speaking, and consulting for nonprofits. He had found a balance that allowed him to use his legal expertise for the greater good, while also nurturing his spiritual and emotional growth. The key is to stay true to your values and to never lose sight of the impact you can have on others. As he watched the student walk away, filled with renewed purpose, David felt a profound sense of gratitude. He thought back to that fateful day in his office, the heart attack that had seemed like the end of everything. Now he understood that it had been just the beginning, the start of a journey that was not only transforming his own life, but touching countless others. "I've always wanted to use my legal skills to make a difference, but I was afraid it wasn't a viable career path. You've shown me that it's possible to align my passion with my profession." David smiled, recognizing his younger self in the student's idealism. "It is possible," he assured her. "It may not always be easy, but it's infinitely rewarding." By living authentically and sharing his experiences openly, he was inspiring others to examine their own lives and priorities. This realization led David to expand his efforts. He began speaking at conferences and workshops, sharing his story of transformation and the lessons he had learned about purpose, compassion, and interconnectedness. At one such event, a young law student approached David after his talk. "Your story has really touched me," she said earnestly. I'm grateful for your openness and your example." In the weeks that followed, David noticed a shift in the culture of his former firm. Robert had introduced pro bono initiatives, encouraging attorneys to dedicate more time to cases that served the community. The firm began partnering with local nonprofits, offering legal expertise to those who couldn't afford it. David realized that his individual awakening had the potential to create much broader change. It starts with small steps, with opening your eyes to the world around you and the impact you can have. They spent hours talking, David sharing insights from his journey, and Robert cautiously exploring the possibility of a more balanced, purpose-driven life. As they parted ways, Robert thanked David with unexpected emotion. "You've given me a lot to think about." The strain on his family relationships, the nagging feeling that there must be more to life than billable hours and courtroom victories. "I'm not saying I want to quit my job and join a commune," Robert said with a wry smile, "but I can't shake the feeling that I need to make a change. I'm just not sure how." David nodded, understanding. "Change doesn't have to be all or nothing, Robert. There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Over a meal at a quiet restaurant, Robert opened up about his own struggles. "I've been watching your journey from afar," he admitted. "At first, I thought you'd lost your mind. But now, I'm beginning to wonder if you've found something the rest of us are missing." David listened as Robert described the emptiness he felt, despite his professional success. Former colleagues, intrigued by his new path, reached out to reconnect. Some were skeptical, unable to understand why he had walked away from a lucrative career. Others were curious, sensing a contentment in David that they found lacking in their own lives. One evening, David received a call from Robert, a senior partner at his old firm. "David, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I was wondering if we could meet for dinner." "There's no need for repayment, Johnson. But if you want to show gratitude, consider paying it forward. Help someone else who's struggling. That's how we create real change in the world." As he hung up the phone, David reflected on how much his life had changed. The pursuit of money and status that had once driven him now seemed hollow compared to the fulfillment he found in serving others. Word of David's transformation began to spread. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks and moments of frustration. But David remained patient and supportive, drawing on a well of compassion he hadn't known he possessed. Months later, David received a call from Johnson. "I just wanted to thank you," Johnson said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've got a new job, a small apartment. It's not much, but it's a fresh start. I don't know how to repay you." David smiled, feeling that now familiar warmth in his chest. "I'm nothing but a failed businessman now." David placed a hand on Johnson's shoulder. "Because your worth isn't determined by your business success or failure. You're a human being deserving of dignity and support. Let's work together to turn things around." Over the following weeks, David helped Johnson navigate the complexities of bankruptcy law, connect with job retraining programs, and secure temporary housing. In his former life, he might have seen Johnson's misfortune as a cautionary tale about the risks of business. Now, he saw a fellow human being in need of support and understanding. "Johnson," David said gently, "I know things are difficult right now, but you're not alone. There are resources and people who can help. If you're willing, I'd like to assist you in getting back on your feet." Tears welled up in Johnson's eyes. "Why would you help me?" Johnson looked haggard, his once impeccable suit now wrinkled and worn. "David? Is that you?" Johnson asked, disbelief evident in his voice. David nodded, offering a warm smile. "It's good to see you, Johnson. Would you like to sit and talk?" Over a simple meal, Johnson shared his story. His company had gone bankrupt, leaving him jobless and eventually homeless. As David listened, he felt a mix of compassion and regret. As David became more involved in community work, he began to see the ripple effects of his actions. The legal advice he provided helped small nonprofits secure funding and expand their reach. His mentorship inspired young people to pursue their dreams despite challenging circumstances. One day, while volunteering at a local soup kitchen, David encountered a familiar face, Johnson, a former client from his corporate days. "I have some experience with fundraising and legal matters that could be useful for your program." Elena's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? That would be amazing. We're always in need of skilled volunteers." As they exchanged contact information, David felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he had experienced in the void. He realized that this was what true fulfillment felt like, using his skills and resources to make a positive difference in the world. "Thank you," she said gratefully, introducing herself as Elena. "I'm organizing a fundraiser for the center's after-school programs. Every little bit of help counts." As they chatted, Elena shared her passion for education and her dreams of creating opportunities for underprivileged children. David listened, mesmerized by her enthusiasm and determination. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I might be able to help with more than just carrying boxes." He began to understand what the voice in the void had meant about the interconnectedness of all beings. Every person he encountered had a story, dreams, and struggles of their own. David found himself deeply moved by the resilience and kindness he witnessed in everyday interactions. One rainy evening, as David was leaving a community center where he had been volunteering, he noticed a young woman struggling with a heavy box. Without hesitation, he offered to help. As weeks turned into months, David's perspective continued to shift. He began to see the world through new eyes, noticing the struggles and triumphs of those around him. He struck up conversations with strangers, the barista at his local coffee shop, the elderly woman who fed pigeons in the park, the homeless man he passed each day on his morning walk. Each interaction left him feeling more connected, more alive. "Are you sure it wouldn't be too much trouble?" David smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "No trouble at all. In fact, I'd like to help personally, if you'll have me." And so began David's foray into volunteer work. He started small, offering legal advice to Michael's program. But soon, he found himself drawn deeper into the world of nonprofit organizations and social justice initiatives. "It's worth every challenge." David listened, captivated. He found himself asking questions, genuinely interested in Michael's work in a way his former self would never have been. As Michael described a mentorship program he was developing, an idea began to form in David's mind. "Have you considered seeking pro bono legal help for the program?" David asked. "I might know some people who could assist." Michael's eyes lit up. "That would be incredible, David." Each conversation was a step towards healing, a chance to mend bridges he had thoughtlessly burned in his single-minded pursuit of success. One sunny afternoon, he met his college roommate, Michael, for coffee. As they sat in a cozy cafe, the years seemed to melt away. Michael, now a high school teacher, spoke passionately about his work with at-risk youth. "It's not always easy," Michael admitted, "but knowing I'm making a difference in these kids' lives." Upon being discharged, David made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He announced that he would be taking a sabbatical from the firm, indefinitely. His partners were baffled, his clients worried. But for the first time in years, David felt truly alive. David's journey of rediscovery began small. He started by reconnecting with old friends he had neglected over the years. Colleagues from the firm stopped by, awkwardly offering get-well wishes. David was struck by how little he actually knew about these people he spent most of his waking hours with. He vowed to change that. As he recovered, David had ample time to reflect on his experience and the lessons he had learned. He began to see his heart attack not as a catastrophe, but as a wake-up call, a second chance to live with purpose and meaning. "We almost lost you." As the medical team swarmed around him, checking vitals and asking questions, David felt oddly detached. His mind was still reeling from the experience in the void. Had it been real? A hallucination brought on by his brush with death? Regardless of its origin, David knew with absolute certainty that he could never return to his old way of life. The following days were a whirlwind of tests, consultations, and visitors. David's eyes flew open, immediately assaulted by harsh fluorescent lights. The steady beep of a heart monitor filled his ears. He was in a hospital room, surrounded by concerned faces, doctors, nurses, and a tearful Sarah. "Mr. Thompson, thank goodness you're awake," Sarah exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. "You had a heart attack. By using your talents not just for personal gain, but for the greater good." As the voice spoke, David felt a warmth spreading through his chest. The pinpricks of light swirled faster, brighter, enveloping him in a cocoon of energy. "Remember, David," the voice said, growing fainter. "Life is precious. Each moment is a gift. Use them wisely." With a jolt, David felt himself being pulled back, away from the comforting void and towards what? "Your life has been out of balance, David," the voice continued. "You have nurtured your intellect, but neglected your heart. You have sought control instead of embracing the beautiful uncertainty of life. But it is not too late to change." David felt a longing he hadn't experienced in years, a desire to connect, to make amends, to live differently. "How?" he asked simply. "By opening your heart, by recognizing the divine spark in every being you encounter. That love, compassion, and understanding are the greatest powers in the universe." As the voice spoke, the swirling lights around David coalesced into shapes, people from his past and present. He saw Sarah, his assistant, whose kindness he had often ignored. He saw pro bono clients he had reluctantly taken on, whose gratitude he had dismissed. He saw estranged friends and family members he had pushed away in his relentless pursuit of success. I seek emptiness," David whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "Yes," the voice confirmed. "You have achieved much in the material world, but at what cost to your spirit? You have forgotten the most fundamental truths of existence." "What truths?" David asked, eager now to understand. "That all beings are interconnected. That true fulfillment comes not from what you gain, but from what you give." When had he stopped caring about making a difference? The voice spoke again. "You have lived your life believing that success and security were the keys to happiness. But look closer, David. What do you see?" David observed his present-day self more carefully. Despite the trappings of success, the expensive suits, the corner office, the luxurious apartment, he saw a man who was profoundly alone. His eyes held no joy. His shoulders were bowed by invisible weights. He found himself watching scenes from his life play out before him like a movie. He saw himself as a curious child, eyes wide with wonder as he explored the world. Then came his teenage years, full of ambition and dreams of making a difference. Finally, he witnessed his adult self, gradually becoming more closed off, focused solely on career success and material gain. As he watched, David felt a deep sadness wash over him. When had he lost that sense of wonder? A gentle voice, neither male nor female, resonated through the void. "Welcome, David. Your journey begins now." Confused but oddly calm, David asked, "Where am I? What journey?" The voice replied, "You are in the space between, neither fully in the physical world nor beyond it. This is a rare opportunity, David, a chance to see your life through new eyes and understand the truths that have eluded you." Before David could respond, the darkness transformed. David gasped, clutching his chest as the room began to spin. The last thing he heard was Sarah's panicked voice calling his name before everything faded to black. David found himself floating in a vast, dark expanse. Gone was the pain, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Is this death? He wondered, surprised by his lack of fear. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, pinpricks of light began to appear, swirling around him like cosmic fireflies. He settled into his leather chair, fingers flying over the keyboard as he responded to a flurry of emails. Hours passed in a blur of phone calls, meetings, and legal briefs. The heaviness in David's chest persisted, growing more uncomfortable as the day wore on. By late afternoon, a dull ache had spread down his left arm. Still, he pushed through, determined to finish reviewing a crucial contract before heading home. It was nearing 7 p.m. when the pain suddenly intensified. He brushed it off, attributing it to lack of sleep and too much caffeine. Little did he know, this day would mark the beginning of a profound transformation. As he strode into his corner office, David's assistant, Sarah, greeted him with her usual cheerful smile. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Don't forget about the Johnson meeting at 10. David nodded curtly, already immersed in his mental to-do list. His life followed a well-worn routine. Wake up at 6 a.m., gulp down a coffee, commute to the office, work tirelessly until late, then return home exhausted. Weekends were for catching up on sleep and preparing for the next grueling week. On this particular Monday morning, as David squeezed into the crowded subway, he felt an unfamiliar sensation. A heaviness settled in his chest, different from the usual stress of impending deadlines. I died and asked Allah about true faith, and the answer shocked me. You may think that the Muslim faith is unshakable, but what happened to me changed everything. David Thompson had always considered himself a pragmatic man. At 42, he had built a successful career as a corporate lawyer, priding himself on his logical mind and ability to navigate complex legal mazes.